Hi, my name is Stephen Ham from Archery Supplies, and today I want to talk about inflation. And you're like, why are you talking about inflation? So I'm out here shooting, that's what I do when I come home from work. And the world's going crazy. It's been going crazy with COVID, it's now going crazy with the war, and yes, there's always wars in the world. But it's still going crazy. Prices are going through the roof. Now, if you look at the inflation numbers, in Australia, it's like 2-3%. America's just produced a number of 10%, and everyone's like, wow, this is all crazy. Everyone's posting about petrol prices, which makes no sense at all. So petrol in Australia right now is $2.20 a litre, and the price of oil crude raw is about $100 a barrel. In 2008, it was $140 a barrel, and it was 95 cents a litre. No idea why. No one cares to explain why the difference is, but that's life. So what I'm interested in inflation is what's happening and where's it going to go to. Now, let's just start off with a bit of history. My grandma sold her house in about 1978 for $4,000. That house today would be worth around $800,000. My other grandmother sold her house in 1987 for about $105,000. That house today would be worth about $1.2 million. My parents sold their house in Morphettvale Vale for about, I think it was $20,000. It sold about 4 years ago for $300,000. The first house I purchased was in 2002 when I was about 22 years old. I paid $150,000 for it. I sold it when I came to Adelaide for $405,000. That was 8 years ago. Today that house is worth about $800,000. So there's been a massive jump in housing prices, not comparable with inflation. Now, just as a side note, I went to America about 3 years ago. I was looking at properties over there to set up an archery business. I looked at houses. I went to Kentucky, and back then I could buy houses for about $20,000 in the suburb, and I was like, you know, we should be buying these houses. They're so cheap. There's plenty of renters. Can make a fortune. And everyone's like, why would you want to buy a house? No one wants to buy houses. That's crazy. That's crazy talk. What are you thinking? That's the exact time when you want to buy. Right then, not when everyone's like, I've got a house for sale. I will give you $100,000 more than you're asking for it if you'll sell it to me. You don't want to be buying houses in that time, as far as I'm concerned. Because that's where we're in now. Right now, you cannot buy a house in South Australia. I don't know about the rest of Australia, but at the moment in South Australia, literally they're going for $100,000 more than asking. So you've got to put in an offer above what they're asking for a house. It's just craziness. Like, I've never seen anything like it. Now, we've always been in the archery industry. Before we were in the archery industry, my dad was general manager at Mitsubishi Motors. Back then he was on $50,000 a year. The average worker was on around $35,000 a year, and he had 2 lease cars, which he got. So he was second from the top at Mitsubishi, and $50,000. Today your executives are on lots of money. My first job was I graduated IT. My first job was in Woolworths. I earned $5 an hour. The kids who work in my store now at the same age are earning between $20 and $25 an hour. So 5 times what I earned. Archery gear is not 5 times what it was then. It's almost the same as it was in the 1980s. My second-hand bow I purchased was about $700. It was Martin Cougar. The arrows I used to buy were expensive. Today you can buy cheap arrows, which are amazing. So my first job was in the public service. So I graduated in IT. My first job was in Social Security doing fraud, and I earned $25,000 a year. I became director in the public service, and I finished on $120,000 a year. Today, that job, I finished working in the public service about 12 years ago. Today, as a director in the public service, that same position would be paid about $180,000. So, what's been happening? The cost of freight has gone through the roof. $2,500 to get a container in. It used to cost, now $11,500. It's costing more to freight the stuff in, more than the profit I was making. So that's what's happened with freight. Freight's gone crazy. The cost of goods is going up. So not only is the cost of freight going up, the cost of the actual products are going up, and they're hard to source. So there's some company, well, all companies that generally have delays. Some companies like Axel, you're talking an 8-month delay. So really, when you get the product, you could sell it for whatever you wanted, because there's just none of them anywhere in the world. So, with inflation, the question is inflation going to continue at this crazy pace that it's continuing, and what impact does it have on you, the individual? So the thing with this is all my point of view, so doing lots of history and research. When inflation occurs, it's really good for the wealthy because they have lots of debt. So if you've got lots of debt and lots of assets, so that's not bad debt as far as credit card debt, this is debt as far as income producing assets. You are miles ahead because your asset has just jumped more than your debt. Your debt's the same, the asset jumps, so suddenly you've just made this chunk of money. So you're really well off if you've got assets, so like real estate, and the thing jumps. So you do very, very well. As a result, the rich become richer and the poor become poorer because rents also go up. So the poor working class person has to pay more for rent, has more trouble buying a house because they're going up faster than their income's going up. And it's generally not a good thing if you want, equality in the system. Now, there's a whole bunch of people predicting the bubble's going to burst and real estate prices are going to crash. I'm going to say they've been predicting that for 20 years, and I've been waiting for the crash and it hasn't been happening. Anyway, so if you think the crash is going to happen because the government's putting too much money and this whole bubble thing's going to burst, you just hold on and then you can buy up big. So I went to the supermarket the other day. Meat had gone up from $30 a kilo to $50 a kilo, and I was like, wow, it's big. Now, some people would say that's a Russia thing, but I'm saying we don't import and we don't export to Russia, so I'm stuffed if I know what it is. It is what it is. You might say Ukraine produces lots of meat now they're not exporting meat to the rest of the world, so that's causing meat prices to go up. I don't know. I don't know what's happening to meat in the US, but here it's going up. And all products are going up. So at the start of COVID, when COVID started, I was like, well, what's going to happen? There was a whole bunch of people predicting this was going to be the end of the economy. All jobs are going to crash because there's going to be no businesses working. Everyone's going to be sick. We're all going to die. And this is the end of the economy. The bubble's going to burst. So there's a whole bunch of people predicting it's going to end. And housing literally just died. And all of a sudden, the government just threw heaps of money at people and business. And housing prices soared. So at that stage, I brought as much property as I could. Right now, the question is what's going to happen in the future? And I've got no idea what's going to happen in the future. And it's always a flip of a coin. Because I can tell you as many people as predict it's going to go up, there's as many people saying it's going to go down. And that's always the case with shares or whatever. And that's why it's the price it is. Because there's as many saying it's going to go up as there's as many say it's going to go down. Anyway, I had a guy come in the shop today. And he's like, why is there no shops out north of Adelaide? Because there's plenty of archers out north. Yes, there is. The problem is, that the markups we have in archery are literally unchanged or less than when my dad started in 1980 selling archery gear. The markups are probably less now than they were then. So what that means is my wages I pull from the archery shop 30 years on or 40 years on from when my dad started selling archery gear are the same or less than what he sold. So the only way I can make more money than my dad, who had the archery business, would be to sell more than he sold. So it means I'd have to actually work harder than he worked. Is the only way can I make more money than dad in the archery business. As a result, there's no archery business that's been set up. Because people can go and work in the public service and earn 3-4 times what they'd earn in an archery shop. They don't have to worry about tax. They don't have to worry about all the complications with running a business. Or you can go and work in the council and earn 3 times what you'd earn in an archery shop. With no complications, no bad reviews, you don't have to worry about anything. So when I started in archery, there was a couple of archery shops in the state. And they carried very limited archery gear, like 2 or 3, 4 bows, very little archery gear. So most of it you had to order in. So like I'm left-handed, you can see I'm shooting right-handed. That's because there was no left-handed bows in the state. So I had to shoot right-handed. Let's go and see where those arrows are. That's my first end for the day. It's not too bad. I'm pretty happy with that. That's just warming up. So when people come in the shop and they say, what sort of discount will you do? And you've spent 2 hours with them setting up their bow or discussing what they want, and you're like, the margins are just rubbish. That's why there's no archery shops. Because they've got all this stock, which they could have invested in real estate, which is going up because inflation's going up. And what happens with your stock is it generally goes down because new models come out and you've got to clear out the other items and lose money on them. And you've got to give lifetime warranty on all these products, which means if that product ever breaks, you've got to fix it for the customer. And I'm talking forever. It's I don't know why Archery does it, but that's what they do. So I'm going to finish with this talk with a little bit of whatever, wisdom or whatever, because I'm a little bit older than probably most. So back in the... I think I was 20, I think I was 30, so 20 years ago, so 20 years ago, 2000, there were some houses for sale in Queensland. And I said to my dad, look, I'm thinking about buying these houses. They give a 10% return on the investment, so that's the rent. That was coming in was 10%. Interest rates were 5%, so I was making money for nothing. I said, look, I'm thinking about buying these houses. What do you think? Dad goes, stupid idea. You should just have all your money invested in the archery business. I'm like, but I don't have to spend any money to buy these houses because it'll be loan. Like, and just money will come in from owning it. So it's a good thing, right? Like, I'll be making 5% for no money out. So just 5% I'll be making for doing nothing. Seems like a no-brainer to me. That's like, stupid, you're an idiot. Which is okay, because I listen to other people and may choose to ignore them and go my own way, and that's fine also, but I do listen. Anyway, I brought those houses up in Queensland. Now, it's 20 years on, the rent has doubled, and the houses are doubled. Now, they would have done better if there hadn't been floods. So if there hadn't been floods and rates hadn't gone from $1,000 a year to $5,000 a year, I would be doing a lot better. But they've still doubled. I had to invest nothing, and they're almost paid off. And the rent is still coming in at double what it was when I brought them. So I think it's a good investment. Now, whether that will continue in the future or not, I don't know. Now, down here, when I moved into South Australia 8 years ago, I was like, this stuff's cheap. You should be getting in on this. And I can remember saying to some of my friends who are archers, stop buying archery gear and start buying houses down here. Anyway, at the start of COVID, I brought as many as I could. And, which wasn't many. It's not like I went out and brought 10. Anyway, they just went up overnight, and it's like, yeah, cool. Now that doesn't mean I got wealthier. As far as I'm concerned, well, yes it does. My total assets are wealthier. But my buying power is not greater. I still own one house, if that makes sense. Because that's the price of the house. You can't go, well, I'll sell it and buy 2 houses because my assets have doubled. It doesn't work like that. So, and my son sort of says this all the time. It's not that you're getting wealthier, Dad. I'm like, well, yes, I am getting wealthier. It's just you're getting poorer because you don't have assets and start buying assets. And assets are things that generate money for you. So things that make you money, not a fancy motorbike, not a fancy car. The car behind me is not an asset. That's a liability. It costs me money to own it. It doesn't generate money for me. It just looks flashy. A house, this house is not an asset. The one I live in is not an asset. It doesn't make money for me. I've got to put money into it all the time. Stuff that generates money for you is an asset, and that's what you want. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. I should have brought the houses in Kentucky 3 years ago. Should have. I didn't. I tried to convince some other people to buy some houses with me. Anyway, that's the way life is, and as you get older, there would have been things that you should have brought. I should have bought Bitcoin 3 years ago. I didn't know about it back then. I know about it now. Fingers crossed. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. That's inflation, my little thing on it. And I think when the government produces numbers, I treat it with a grain of salt because I'm like, I can just, common sense doesn't even tell me these numbers make sense. And what really hurts me is that's the era I used to work in the public service, in numbers and statistics. So I know those numbers are crap and they've been made up, and there's a whole bunch of things why. Because they exclude housing, they exclude certain costs that are really big drivers in the cost of your living. And the government excludes it because they don't want it to look a lot of things, so you feel better about it. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I'm Stephen Hand. I'll get back to shooting because that's important to shoot lots of arrows. Thanks for watching. Bye.